Well, here we are. It is Leap Week 2020, and I know that this doesn't look like it normally looks. You guys are normally on campus, so excited to be there and spending so much time getting to know new people, new experiences, and more importantly, growth, which is why I'm here. So my name is Tracy Martin. I am a transformational life coach, been doing that about 25 plus years. I am an author, a designer, a speaker, and a coach. And all that means is I've answered the calling on my life, which is why I'm standing here before you guys. I really want to inspire you to do the same. And to do the same in such a way that maybe you're not sure of what's going on in the world right now, but we know it looks different. So one of the playbooks that everyone decided upon that I would do for you guys this week is called Young Life in Transition. And this is a huge topic, one that I coach on and I speak on more oftentimes than not. Because as we go through our world and as we grow through our life, we're actually in transition on a constant basis. The thing is that we don't necessarily have the language for what this is. And our family and our friends and the people that we work with are also going through transition. So we need to remember that and be really mindful of while we're going through something, so is everyone else. And those that are around us are also experiencing what we're experiencing. So when we have that language of moving through transition with grace, with growth, and with courage, we really get to the point of realizing that we're on a journey of our life. Maybe this doesn't look like you thought it was going to look right now. I'm sure that none of us could have anticipated this. However, here we are. So whether you're going through the growth of, middle school to high school to college, college to the workforce, maybe you've decided to get married and have a family at a very young age. Maybe you're going for the biggest career that you could ever think about, or maybe you're just kind of stuck a little bit in deciding what you want to do. So the playbook I know is available to you guys right now to download, to be able to have it at your fingertips. And I really want to encourage you to do that because inside the playbook is some journaling pages. And what I want you to do is, I might have written this playbook, however, I want you to actually take the information and make it yours. And then take this with you everywhere you go. Work on your journaling throughout here because as we know, life is constantly moving and shifting, and so should we. And during this time of transition, one of the most important things that you need to understand is that you're finding your authentic voice. And isn't that what we all want to do through life anyway, is find our authentic voice, who we are, why we're here, and what we're called to do. And if you're lucky, all of those will align together and will actually create your world and actually live by design instead of by default. So if you would, grab your playbooks if you have them, or bring them up on your laptop, whatever you have. And one of the things that I want to start with is throughout this playbook, there's some really, really great quotes, some really good thought-provoking things that I want you to take a second, read it, and take it in. And the reason why I want you to be so intentional about this is because that's the only way that you're actually going to grasp what's going on. I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you right now, most of my clients and the people I work with are going through a lot. They're going through shifting world of their families, shifting of their jobs, shifting of their schools, shifting of events like this. Leap is normally an incredible time for you guys, and right now everybody's trying to get it together with you to serve it to you and to present it to you through video, which sometimes can be challenging. So I experienced some of that myself getting this together. So I want you to understand that when people go through and they grow through things, it's completely 100% an opportunity for growth. So shift that mindset right now, be with me right here to where we can actually talk about your growth in a very important way, but yet in a very intentional way. So one of the quotes that comes in the very part of this is, if your gut is telling you something is off, you should probably rethink what you're doing. And that quote came about from one of our teen ambassadors, Joseph Stallone. He's been through quite a bit of transitions himself. So what I want you to do is put yourself in that position. Think about that. Have you gone against your gut instinct? Have you turned that off when you should have turned it up? Have you actually learned to listen to what that is? Because it's there for a reason. It's meant to guide us. It could even be called a compass at times. So when you're going through this book and when you're going through life, tap into that intuition. I don't think there's enough conversation about it in the world right now, to be honest with you, because I think so many times we second guess that voice. We're not sure why it's here. We're not sure why we're hearing it. And so we just push it aside. So be intentional right now when you're with me and think about it. There's a voice that you're hearing that might come in at a louder noise that's meant for you. If I put 2,000 people in a room and I speak and I do a presentation, every person will probably take away what's meant for them. They heard it at a louder volume and they understand that that was their message. So again, we may be in the room together and doing life together. However, our mission and our voice and what we hear is very different and meant for us and us alone. And when you're in transition in the life phase that you guys are in right now, you're writing your life book. You're writing your book of life, which means that you might be in chapter 15 or you might be in chapter 25. So I have a question for you. When you're going through transition, what do you normally default to? Do you default to what you know? Do you become fearful? Do you become questioning? Do you want to know what if or why can't I figure this out? If you do, I want you to think about this. Let's say this is a book, and let's say this book is 25 chapters long. So when you're reading your book or you're creating your book of life, why is it then that we might be on chapter 15? Why do we take what happened in chapter 2 or chapter 3 and put it in chapter 15? So when you're going through a transition, what you've grown through is meant to stay behind you. You can learn from it, but you can't take it with you. So think about that metaphor on your book as well. If you're writing your book of life, don't take a previous chapter and put it in the current chapter. It doesn't belong. But so oftentimes we do that. We do that every single day. We go through something difficult in life and we default back to what we know, rather than embracing what's coming to us in a different way. Maybe using different skills and different tools that you didn't even know you had. But when you're challenged is when you want to rise up and you want to grab those tools and use them. So think about that as a great metaphor. Think about the metaphor of a book. You're writing your book of life. Take a second. Now figure out what chapter you're on. And then when something happens, make sure you stay constantly in that chapter and you look forward. Don't look back. You've already been back there. You know what's back there. There's no need to revisit that. So when you're going through a transition, it's always forward. And I want you to think forward thinking. Mindset is huge right now. Mindset matters more than anything right now. How you start your day, how you continue through your day, and maybe you might need to disrupt your day with a mindset shift if something comes about that you didn't even expect. So think about that. So grab your books again, follow along if you can, and I hope you guys can track me on this. So it talks about what transition is. So oftentimes we hear older adults or older generations talk about seasons in life. Well, the thing is that we all go through seasons in life. It's just a different language. So for the younger generation, we usually talk about a transition. You're going through transitions in life. You might be, shifting and growing through your academics, maybe through relationships, maybe through family, maybe through tragedies, maybe through adversities. Whatever it is that's life got in store for you, you want to make sure that you can transition through it and grow through it. That's the goal. Because it's not a matter of when something would happen. It's a matter it's not a matter of if something happens, it's a matter of when something will happen. And do you have the skills and tools and the mindset to grasp it? So when you're going through a transition, so many times we overthink. We try to figure it out. We're asking ourselves, why is this happening? What if I do this? Well, how come I can't figure that out? And we're not in the moment where we should be, which is what I'm talking about, is back into that chapter that you're actually writing. You're still writing your book of life, and the current chapter is where you need to stay, because that's where you're meant to hear the most and to grow the most for yourself right now. Then you'll move forward in other chapters, but right now this is what's really important for you. So flip to the next page and you'll notice, like I said on the back, there's journaling here. So here's the other thing that Joseph came up with when he was writing this. Mind over matter. Don't overthink or give up. Stay strong and enjoy the journey of growth. The journey of growth, enjoy that. That's a difficult statement sometimes, because growth means we might go through pain or we might go through adversity, which is again transitioning from one phase to the next phase. And that's why I love this word so much. Rather than a negative word or creating a negative mindset, we're actually realizing that we're embracing what's ahead of us, that we're actually going to go after what we want. Imagine if we did that in every phase of life. Imagine if we actually put our Batman cape on and we went after the world like a 9-year-old, right? Nobody can tell a 9-year-old that he's not Batman. However, when we want something in our life, We stop ourselves constantly because of our negative thoughts. And when you're going through transitions in life, we allow those to stop us where we are, rather than auditing them and realizing that we can take the good and move forward, and we can leave the negative and learn from it and leave it in the past. It's intentional living, it's intentional growth. So one of the things I really want to talk about is when we go through transitions, a lot of times it leaves us with memories. It leaves us with traumas. It might leave us with an imprint of a situation or an experience. And that is neither good nor bad. That just happened. It happened for us, not to us. So if you can reframe that, there's a great skill in my other curriculum called the Transformation Declaration and the Ripple Effect that talks about different 12 pillars of sustainable living. And what I mean by that is things that you might go back and reset your moral compass on. And one of them that really important to me, because I think it's a really important master tool, is learning how the art of reframing. Learning how to reframe a situation, which means that it becomes for you and it becomes beneficial to you, no matter how difficult that might have been. And let's face it, there are a lot of difficult things right now that we're going through, things that we're in uncertainty. We hear it all the time with everything going on in the world. We live in uncertain times. Well, I'd like to disrupt that a little bit, because aren't all of our times always uncertain? We can't predict the future. We don't know what we're doing. We just literally walk every day one foot in front of the other, and we use our skills and our tools and our experience to grow from. So think about that. Don't be so caught up and stuck in the language that you're hearing in today's world. Choose to reframe it into something that can actually shift your mindset into growth moving forward, because we're going to need that. We're going to absolutely need that in the future. So when I tell you about the memories and the traumas and the imprints and the patterns and the behaviors, that's what our experience is. That's like the residue that leaves on us, that kind of leaves on our bodies and our minds, these particular things. And so every other coach out there or speaker out there, you guys are listening to some amazing people this week, I know. And so what I want you to think about when you're listening is taking away the really important information that helps you with your growth. So when I say like an imprint or a habit, there's keystone habits. For instance, if you're going through transitions and you're not sure exactly what a keystone habit is. So for instance, a keystone habit might be a healthy lifestyle or fitness, because it creates a ripple effect. So I might begin working out. However, when I begin working out, I get mental clarity. I gain confidence. I gain higher self-esteem. I gain a better sense of well-being. So there's a lot more layers, and that's what a keystone habit is. So well-being, fitness, nutrition, those are keystone habits in life. So remember those particular things when you're going through a transition, because you're gonna need to recall that, which means that it's already been applied to your life. You've already grasped that tool, and maybe it's in your toolbox. Maybe you don't need it right now, but you have to have the ability to recall that, or when you're going through a difficult situation, you can reframe the situation into something that's actually meant for you, not something that's being done to you. So I hope you're tracking me on this, and please take some notes, you guys, because when you leave here, I want you to remember the words that you heard, the words that were meant for you, and maybe someone else heard something completely different. Most of you guys are in high school or college, so think about this. You're all in the same classroom, but your notes don't look the same. So what you heard the teacher say might have been something very different than what somebody else heard the teacher say. So think about that. Think about this individual voice that you have. And it's not about me, but it is about me. So it's not about you, but it is about you, because it's how you show up in your world that then creates an impact in others' worlds, right? It creates that ripple effect. One of my dear friends told me one day, as a coach and as a speaker, she said, Tracy, you are the stone that's thrown into the water, and your clients and the people that hear your curriculums and your talks are the ripple effect that goes out into the world. How amazing is that? To know that everyone that's listening to this can take away something so good and then can apply it to their particular sphere of influence. I hope you guys believe that we all do have a sphere of influence, and take that very, very seriously, because as you go through life and you transition through life, you'll have different spheres of influence. You'll have different ages, different generations, and you will impact every single person that you come in contact with. Think about that. This is not by chance. This is by design. So back into the book, I want you to really focus on these 6 things, okay? 6 things. 6 things as you're going through the curriculum. Number 1, there's 6 steps to letting something go. And I'm gonna use this as a metaphor only because I do this with some of the people that I work with. So we go on a hike. So here's the interesting thing, and follow me on this, okay? So you know how we all bring our past situations and our past experiences and our past traumas into our future, and we transition from stage to stage to stage in life, but yet we bring it with us? Maybe it shows up in a relationship, maybe it shows up in a job choice. So here's the thing. One of the best things I do with my clients, and I do with people that actually attend some of the places that I speak with, is we take a backpack and we might load it with 40 pounds, and I sit it on the ground and we start up a mountain, we climb a mountain. And the interesting thing is I always tell their clients, this represents your past. This represents the difficult things that you've been through and gone through. So they pick it up, they put it on, and we make our way up the mountain. And so in the curriculum, in the playbook, you'll see the 6 steps that what we do, so you can follow along. So as we go up, halfway through, I'll check in with my client and I'll ask them, how are you? And they're like, well, I'm tired, this is really heavy, and I'm really tired. And I said, okay, so I'll ask them, may I help you carry your load? And they look at me kind of interesting, and they're like, well, yeah. So they hand me the backpack, and then their load is lighter, and they go up the mountain again, and then I hand it back to them. And we get to the top, and the conversation is always the same. It is, are you tired? Yes. Was that really heavy? Yes. And then I ask my client, or I say to my client, do you know that at any given time, you could have let that go? And they look at me and said, well, you told me to pick it up. I said, no, I sat it down next to you. You automatically picked it up. I never said pick it up and carry it. But that represented something that you believed you should pick up and carry, which is our past. So transitions will give you an opportunity to leave it there. So it's a great metaphor. So think about that. Maybe there's something in your life that backpack could represent as you're going through a transition. And interestingly enough, when we get up there, I say, you know, you could have let that go at any given time, just that fast. And they sit there quietly and we talk, and they look at me like, what? I go, I never told you you had to continue with it, and I never told you to pick it up. But you did it anyway, because you believe and you perceive that that's what you were supposed to do. How many times do we get out of a negative situation or a difficult transition and we take it with us? Whether it's through a mindset, whether it's through our physical body, whatever it might be, through a heartbreak, whatever it might be, and we continue with it. Just know that at any given time, you can let that go. You don't have to continue to carry it. So this is a really good spot to journal. If there's something that you're going through, whenever you go back and you listen to this, if there's something that you're going through, think about that. Those were the 6 steps, and you can follow along here, just what I just explained to you. The other thing I want you to talk and think about is, do you have fear going through transition? Have you gotten to a stage in your life yet, depending upon your age, that you have fear of what's next, what's to come? Your language, the fear, the anxiety, the things that a lot of kids your age and young adults your age actually do struggle with. It actually is part of your language today. I don't even remember how old I was whenever I first heard the word anxiety. I didn't even know what it was. And now it is such an ingrained part of your language. So think about that. Think about what is your language, what has been imprinted within your generation that really doesn't serve you guys. Because I can tell you right now, Gen Z, you guys are going after everything you want in life. Because you can. Because you've got people here that are willing to be there for you. And allow them to be in this transitional time with you. So think about that, okay? There shouldn't be fear around a transition. There should be wonderment. There should be excitement, there should be intentionality, but the fear really has no place in this because it's what's to come. Imagine if your life unfolded in front of you and you could see it. It wouldn't be the same than experiencing it. That's the key, is understand that you're experiencing something that's meant for you. So as you go through here and you realize the journey of transitioning now is happening for you, not to you. So keep that mindset on that. And there's examples in the playbook that talks about, maybe you've experienced bullying, maybe you've experienced, negative things in school, maybe you've experienced cyberbullying on some sort of a social media platform. Whatever it might be, okay, it's a transition. If you can use that skill that I talked about a few minutes ago, which was reframing a situation, ask if what you went through didn't help you learn a little bit more about yourself. Did it teach you something about yourself? Because I can tell you right now, there is a whole nother version of you that you've not met yet. And that's pretty exciting when you think about it. And when you're in a family, they don't necessarily see that. So a lot of times I might coach an 18 or 19-year-old and the parents still see them as a 10-year-old. And that's a difficult thing to go through. However, you have to find your voice and your conviction to identify a transition so that you can then explain it and speak to your family around you so that they understand. We celebrate markers in your life. We celebrate your birthdays, the passing of the grades, graduating, but we don't celebrate your growth. We don't even think about it. A lot of times I'm a parent of two young girls, one's 17 and one's 20, and I don't necessarily look at them as young adults sometimes. So I have to go through and be intentional. Hang on a minute, you're not that age anymore. You're actually growing. So give your parents and family and people around you a little bit of grace, but yet give them the voice of conviction when you're actually going through a transition so that they can understand and support you. Because parents only know what you're willing to tell. There's an internal dialogue in your mind that you're only willing to share so much. So we don't know what we don't know until we're told differently. So that communication during transition is huge. So think about that. Go through the book and read it on your own time. I really want you to take this seriously and to realize that this was put together with such a way, all my playbooks are put together in such a way that they're easy, they're super digestible digitally for you, but they're meant to take it from this book to your life, whatever that looks like. So here's the interesting thing about going through different types of transitions. You'll notice that you become a different person. And you're meeting yourself coming and going. You go through the stage of feeling like you know everything. You go through the stage of feeling like, everybody tells you that you're lazy, which maybe you are, maybe you're not, maybe you're just not interested. Maybe there's things that parents or family want you to do, but you're just not interested. Understand that you still have to do the respectful thing, but yet you can also speak to them and say, this really isn't important to me. However it's important to you, I'll take care of it. But it's like when somebody says to you, my clients say all the time, their parents are upset because they didn't take the trash out. It's not about the trash. It's about so many other things. So think about that around your own home, your own, what I call your own ecosystem. Think about how you're showing up during a transition. Because a lot of times we get kind of focused on ourselves and we don't necessarily understand that we're surrounded by people who care about us and who love us. They just might not know what to do. So think about that. Another thing I want you to talk about, now this is something that I think that you really need to focus on this one, because this is during the shift. So if you go to page 8, you'll see that there's 4 things that I want you to define in your life right now. Number 1 is to think about, have you found your voice? And what I mean by that is your authentic voice. Have you found your words, your language, your passion? Have you found that yet? So that's number 1. Number 2 is your identity in crisis or in question? Who you are as a person. I think our world has kind of shifted and gotten away from the understanding of what values and beliefs and morals are. Where is your moral compass, which is part of your identity? What are your virtues? When you can identify those in your world, you can actually understand who you are and, more importantly, who you are becoming. Then you can identify your authentic voice because it's yours. It's been given to you. So if there's something that's been put on your heart, don't expect someone else to understand it. It was put on yours for a reason. You're the steward of that. Number 3, can you define who you are becoming? So if you put 1 and 2 together and you take it from a moral compass standpoint, who are you becoming in this world? So oftentimes I'm not so concerned with what you do for a living. I'm more concerned with who you are while you're doing it. We know so many people in high-powered positions, in leadership positions, but they're not an evolved person. They might be a boss, but they're not a leader. And I know Leap's focus a lot of times is on leadership. What kind of leaders are you becoming? Because whether you're in a friend group, or whether you're in a business, or maybe a fraternity or a sorority, or just with a group of friends, it doesn't matter. You're part of the leadership of that group. And how are you showing up? So when you go through a transition from one situation in life to the other, if you have the mindset that it's growing you, you'll grasp it a lot easier and you'll understand who you are becoming because you're being prepared for your life. You know, one of my favorite quotes out of my book is, you know, what you desire is deliberately placed out of reach so that you must become the person that it takes to obtain it. Think about that. Think about literally the things that you want in your world. You're being prepared for that because you've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've identified it. It's no different than if I want to build a dream house, I'm going to put together a really great blueprint, right? So in order to do that, I have to think about it, I have to visualize, I have to know what I want. Those are the questions that we have in our world. So number one is finding your voice, your authentic voice. Number two is your identity. Who are you becoming? Think about that. Number three is defining what that is. Define who you're becoming. And the last one, what behaviors do you have now that don't belong in the future? Which means that you're going to shed those things away. So there's a story, you guys might know this, but it's of a lobster who has the ectoskeleton, and the lobsters, I don't know how many times they shed it during their world. It's so many, I mean, probably 25, 30 times. But what they do is when it becomes too tight, their shell, they go to the bottom of the ocean, they shed the ectoskeleton, and then they protect themselves from predators until a new one grows. And then they come back up and they get back into the world. We don't do that as people. We continually try to fit into something that doesn't fit us anymore. And that's why I said this page with being a shift page is so important, because it's actually helping you identify what is in your life that might not fit anymore. What is that? So you have to think about your voice, you have to think about your identity, who you're becoming, and what part of your life doesn't belong in your future. And that's why I use that story about the lobster, because it becomes too tight and confining and they let it go. That's a great lesson for us to learn. We can let things go as well. Super easy, like I used the metaphor with the backpack. You know, it takes work, it takes focus and intentionality, but you can do this. You can actually get to a place of understanding that what you've been through no longer has a place in your life. So if it's left habits or behaviors that no longer belong in your future, you have to identify those. And that requires self-reflection. But one of my favorite things that I talk about with people is personal mastery. Not self-development, not self-help, personal mastery. That means that you know yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt, however you will react and respond in any given situation. That's taking your power back. And when you're going through transitions in life, and like I said, we can review back to going from middle school to high school to college to meeting someone to if you want to get married, if you want to be a young mom, if you're going after your, this amazing career that you've had, whatever that is, all those transitions are really important. So when we understand that they're meant to grow us and that we're actually going through them, we can get the idea that life is happening for us. And if there's behaviors and habits and imprints that don't belong in there, we need to identify those. And that requires personal mastery. That requires the ability to build your personal toolbox, to gain life skills, valuable life skills that school's not teaching you, but things like Leap Week are teaching you. They're teaching you valuable tools and skills that can actually grow you in life. That's pretty amazing. And it's done outside of your home, which means you're probably gonna hear the voice a little bit more than you would if it was your parents. So the messenger does matter. So think about that. So when you're going through this particular page, take a few extra minutes and think about it. Think about who you're becoming, because you haven't met that person yet, but you're becoming that person. Interestingly enough, when we're in school and when we're mostly in high school, not necessarily in college, but when we're in school, we sometimes change who we are to fit with people that we go to school with 5 days a week. If we do that, nothing is real. Our reality is not real because we're not showing up authentically. So, the people that you grow up with you will probably outgrow. Think about that. The people that you grow up with, you will probably outgrow. Very few friendships will remain from high school to college and beyond. Be okay with that. Think about that. Be okay with the fact that you are growing through something that you're not sure of yet. So some of those friends can continue to grow with you and support you and love you and cheer you on, and some people may not be able to. But it's not about you. It's not personal. Be willing to look at that, audit your inner circle, and transition to the next. Because again, people sometimes are part of our puzzles, but it doesn't mean that they're meant to stay. They might teach you something. They might teach you something about yourself. They might show you a different way. They might be a part of your life forever, and they may not. They may connect you to another person. All of this is the plan of life, is living by design, not by default. So think about that. So like I said, some of the people that you grow up with, you might outgrow. And our friend groups I know are very important in high school. They're not so important in other situations of our life if it isn't something that's good for us. Be willing to walk away from those situations and put in those healthy boundaries and look at that non-toxic world that we all are striving for. You know, going through a transition, it's kind of like a roller coaster. You know, you jump on the roller coaster, you're all excited, you're all in, and you get there and then you slowly go up and then you free fall down. It's exciting. We can get that with a roller coaster, but not with our life. So I just want to tell you guys, in this quote right here, I love, hold on tight to your power source. You're just getting started. Think about that. You're just getting started. And there's so many things ahead of you as you go through transitions in life. And we have this mindset of it's such a negative thing when we go through specific things. And I get that. I hear you 100%. However, when we decide that we're actually growing, it's not so bad. We can actually have the mindset and look at something and audit it and think, that was really difficult. That was an adversity. However, I grew from it. I'm ready for the next thing. What do you got? What's coming next? So have that power source and hold on to that. Don't give your power away. Nobody else deserves that but you. So think about that. And that quote is on page 10. And it's something I think is really, really important for you to grasp onto. Because a lot of times we go through high school and you know, games are played or our emotions are hurt, or you know, we give our power away to people because we perceive that we want to fit in, or we perceive that they are our friend even though they probably are not our friend. Like I said, we change who we are to fit in with people we go to school with 5 days a week. Think about that. Because if you walked away from there with the best of the best people that you really want in your life, your circle might be small. You know, it might be smaller than what you think. So think about that. And it's okay, right? We want quality over quantity, 100%. So when I talked a few minutes ago, I talked a little bit about your moral compass, and I talked about your skills and your life skills and your values and your beliefs and your morals. And I want you to really take some extra time on this section, and I want you to think about defining those. So defining your morals and values. So I just put a few here, you know, integrity, honesty, honor, kindness, character, accountability, responsibility, and courage. These are just a few that we define a lot of times when I do events with people, but the one that I want to kind of, I guess, edit a little bit is the accountability, and I'd like to put the word radical in front of there. Radical accountability is your friend. How many lies do we tell ourselves every day? Every day we tell ourselves so many lies, rather than realizing that we're doing ourselves a disservice when we do this. So think about that. Think about that radical accountability that is so difficult and so painful, but is so good for us. So it's kind of like eating your broccoli instead of the chocolate cake, right? So we need to make sure that we choose that, which is a solution-based thought process. So you have to ask, how do yours measure up? You know, what are your values and morals? Have you ever sat down and spoken with your family or, you know, your close inner circle and asked them, you know, what's your important values? You know, usually when I meet with someone for the first time, we identify those values and those beliefs and those morals and those things that are kind of, that's where we grasp our world out of. This is what we're holding on to, and then we move forward from that. That's our compass. That's how we decide to do life. So think about this section and try to sit with it a little bit more than what you would, and give it some thought process. And maybe sit down and ask your family, Maybe ask them, I haven't asked you these questions before, but what do you think about, what are your values? Because a lot of times we as children inherit our beliefs and our values from our family and from our close people, like our extended family. So think about that, because a lot of times what your beliefs are will not align up with your inherited beliefs, and that can cause chaos within a family. And that also is a transition time, because as you're going through things, you're going to realize that there's things out in front of you that you see that are really important to you, but they might not be important to someone else in your world. So you have to be willing to see that from your perspective, but yet realize as your moral compass, it's set to you, not to someone else. And we can define these, and that's why I said to define these for yourself. Okay, if I said to you, what is kindness? We could probably define it in a very simple term. However, how do you show that in the world? That's the difference. Because defining your values and your beliefs and your morals is one thing. Having action behind them and walking them out in the world is another thing. So that's thinking about that. Think about how you actually define them, but then how you walk them out. You hear the campaigns, pay it forward, be kind, kindness is cool. What all these campaigns are is meaning to identify that language, but then how would you show that in the world? What would you do? And if you had an opportunity, would you take it? Would you see it as an opportunity? I had an event, this is probably a few weeks ago, and someone it was the sweetest thing, because she offered to donate something. And I said, this is amazing, I appreciate it. And she came back and said, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. So think about everything as an opportunity to do better. So when you're defining these values and morals and beliefs, then ask yourself, how am I going to show these to the world? How am I going to show these to the most important people in my life and myself? How is that going to look out there? So think about that. And some of these are simple. Some of these require a little more thought. Some of them require a little bit more action behind to actually grasp and get a hold of. So many things, so many times, like I said, we have this issue with, wanting to fit in. And we're trying to find our friend group. And we're trying to find people that we can do life with. And there's a group of people that I always look to, two different groups that I would like to just introduce you guys to. One is called Life Navigator Friends, and one is called your Board of Directors. Those two particular groups of people are very important to who you are and who you are becoming. Life Navigator Friends are friends that don't necessarily feed or enable your behavior when it's not aligned with something better or higher. They're willing to be that person that says to you, you need to think about this. Why did you do that? What is that choice? They're Life Navigator Friends. They care about you so much that they can see things that maybe you can't. So that's one group of friends. The other group is what I always encourage people to do, is get a board of directors for your life, a board of life directors. These are people, whether it's a coach, a mentor, an older family friend, someone that you really, really value, because as you're going through transitions in life and you're growing from 15 to 25 and beyond, which is where you guys are right now, you have to have those people that have the wisdom and have the conviction of actually educating you. And it may not be your mom and your dad. It may be an uncle. It may be, a neighbor. It may be someone in your church. It may be someone at school. It may be a teacher or a coach, but identify those and ask them intentionally, will you be on my board of directors for my life? And all that means is that's that person that you're going to go to, that you're going to get solid advice. You're going to get really advice that is neutral, that they don't have skin in the game, but they're not willing to enable a behavior that maybe isn't serving you. So Life Navigation Friends, find that group, whoever that is. It may only be two, it may be one. It doesn't matter. Quality over quantity. So find that group, and then also seek out a board of life directors. Seek out people that you can actually, when you go through a transition, you can take a step back and you can give them a call and just say, hey, you got 30 minutes? Everybody needs that. But so oftentimes we go to our peers, which is fine, but they don't have the wisdom or the point of reference that we need sometimes when we need advice through transitional life. So we want to make sure that we have those two groups of people in our world, and those two groups can be identified. The board of directors, the board of life directors is really important. Like I said, be intentional about it, have a conversation and tell them why you're reaching out. Tell them that you need that. And I mean, I'm that for a lot of people. So if anyone needs it, just, absolutely after the video, you can get a hold of me through Instagram or wherever. And I want you to understand that when you have that person that actually can give you that wisdom-based advice, it's advice that's meant for you without an agenda. Because a lot of times we go and we ask for advice, that person may have an agenda on why they are or are not telling you something, or are not identifying a specific behavior in you. So think about those two groups. So the Life Navigator friends and the Board of Life Directors. That's really, really important. So let's go through the next page, which is page 13. And it talks about, a little bit more into the Board of Directors. And if you can't get a group of people like that, then seek out a mentor, seek out a coach. Seek out one person that can be that moral compass for you that you need. Everyone needs somebody. Everyone needs a person in their life that they can actually go to in difficult situations that they know they can count on. Without beyond a shadow of a doubt, they're going to get really, really good advice. So that's a really important section, again, to think about. Use your journaling page on there. Write down a few names, text the person, or pick up the phone. It's always better to pick up the phone. I know we're so easy with texting right now. And the other thing that I want you to talk about and think about is when you're going through a transition, is realizing that you really have to worry about your conversations. So I always say people are always scared of confrontation. So I want to reframe that for you, which is one of the pillars. I want to reframe that for you into a confrontation is just an intentional conversation with an outcome that's expected. That's it. Confrontations don't have to be negative. They don't have to be detrimental. They don't have to be something that's so scary that you get yourself all worked up. So a confrontation is just an intentional conversation. And if you go to page 14, it talks about conversations with your parents, which oftentimes I hear so many times, I can't talk to my parents. I can't talk to my parents. They don't hear me. And that's true. Sometimes parents are very, we're spread very thin. So we definitely can be distracted. So be intentional, like I said, a confrontation, but from a good place. So number one, you are not only their child, but you are becoming an adult. Act like one. Come to the table with all the information that you need to speak. Number two, outline a specific topic that you would like to discuss so it will be taken seriously and they can focus on it from your perspective. Because I'm telling you right now, as a parent, I'm going to bring my perspective to the table. I want you to disrupt that. And I want you to then come to me with your perspective that I can actually get behind, I can actually understand. Number three, pick the best time to talk. Don't do it when somebody's rushed or preoccupied. Be intentional. And that's why I said that confrontation is an intentional conversation. Number four, realize that they may not always be able to hear you, so have patience with them. Sometimes we have that disconnect in our dialogue. We don't necessarily have that, I call that destiny dialogue, that dialogue that is destined to be heard by the other person, that is also focused on your greater good. So think about that. And then number five, be willing to be a peacemaker within that conversation. That's a tough one. This means that you will get out ahead of anything that could cause a block in the progress of your communication. Master communication is a life skill that you've got to grasp, because relationships are foundation for everything that we do in our world, right? Whether we're our friends, our romantic relationships, our school, our administrators, our teachers, our professors, our bosses, our leaders, every single thing is a relationship, and we've got to be able to have those difficult conversations if we expect to level those up. And in today's world, it's so difficult because we transition from the phone conversations to texting, to DMing, to Snapchat, to Instagram, to all these things, to Twitter, but we don't realize that sometimes that's miscommunicating. So go back to the core of person-to-person confrontation with intentional conversation. Be willing to do that because it changes the game. It changes the outcome, and we don't have to keep tiptoeing around each other. We can get to the point, have ourselves heard, and then come up with a solution, whatever that is for you. Okay, so think about that, because you have to become the peacemaker sometimes, which means maybe you've misspoken, or maybe you've spoken at not a good time, and you have to then bring that conversation around and go at it again. So be willing to do that, okay? So think about this page on the conversation with the parents, because really important. And you can, and it's not just parents, you can do this with, you know, your administrators, you can do this with your friends, you can do this with anybody in your world. There's these 5 steps for communicating that you really need to understand, that it's creating a master communication skill. Communication in today's world is a skill, and you have to learn it, because your relationships are everything, everything. So if you know you are going to regret it in the morning, why even bother to do it in the first place? Which goes back to that moral compass. Think about your moral compass whenever you choose to do something in life. So after the conversation, and then we're just going to split this part here, and so this kind of goes to page 15, where it talks more about your thought process as a person, your choices, your decisions. You know, how are you making them? Where are you making them from? And how do they actually serve you? So think about that on 15. It talks more about things that you'll encounter through life. You know, peer pressure doesn't happen in high school. It happens all the time, all over the place, especially in today's world. We have it through social media, we have it in the workplace, we have it in families, we have it in friends. So, you know, peer pressure, people always say, oh, I succumb to peer pressure in school. It's not gonna go away. So if you don't get that skill of deciding, why would I do this if I'm gonna regret it? Because somebody else is telling you to, but it doesn't align with you. That goes back to what we said a few minutes ago, personal mastery. Personal mastery is your friend. Personal mastery will actually put you in the good place to make the best decisions that you can make. So, and again, on page 16, it talks more about the peer pressure. It talks more about temptation. It talks more about, you know, transitioning through high schools. And, you know, sometimes I feel like you're walking through a minefield. You know, you're just waiting for something to happen, you know, but if you have the mindset of, no, I'm not gonna just wait for something to happen, I'm actually gonna navigate myself through life with an intentionality, that's how you're gonna create a more successful outcome. So go back to that if you need to, but again, these journals are meant here to help you. So, you know, friends, you know, it says friends come in and out of your life, but your family is the one thing that will typically remain constant. This is a difficult situation, and I want you guys to hear me on this, because sometimes family isn't necessarily a good compass for you at this time. Not that they don't mean well, but the fact they're trying to communicate with you and realize that you're growing and you might be outgrowing them. So be really intentional with your conversation with your family, because it's so important to build those bridges and to have that communication, because they 100% want to understand. It's just difficult through generations sometimes, or we bring our perception from whatever we've been through, or our point of reference. And so oftentimes, and this is not a negative statement, this is just strictly an identification. So oftentimes they parent their kids from their past, not your future. And that's a tough thing to hear. But as a kid and as a young adult and a teen, I want you to hear that, because that might give you a little bit of perspective. You know, that sometimes our parents are parenting us from their past rather than your future. So think about that as a conversation. And again, if you have a conversation about this, be very intentional with your words, be very focused on that confrontation or intentional conversation on that. And remember too, families go through transitions. You know, parents go through transitions. We all go through transitions. So this doesn't just happening to you. Life isn't just happening to you, isolation. You know, it's not happening to you by yourself. It's happening to you within your family, your friends, and your school, and whatever else you choose to experience in life. So remember that transition is not a negative, it's just an event in life that you're gonna inevitably go through. So embrace it and think about it. Think about that, you know, while we're going through something, so are those around us. You know, while we're as teen and young adults and we're growing, so are our parents. You know, while we're getting older, so are our parents. So we have to make sure that we keep those lines of communication open and not alienate people, not alienate one another. And again, if you're in a home that maybe the conversation's difficult, you may have to bring in a mentor, you may have to bring in a coach or someone to be willing to have those conversations, because ultimately we all just want success. We all want a successful family, we all want successful relationships, but we gotta be willing to do the difficult conversations, and we gotta be willing to have the intentional conversations. You know, and that's what it says on here too, on page 18, it talks about, you know, parents that are also going through the change. Oftentimes the communication hasn't caught up with where they are and everyone is in their life. So think about that. This can create chaos within communications of families. So seek to be the peacemaker, like I said earlier, and the negotiator. Have a solution-based mindset when you sit down and have a conversation, especially going through choosing your college, that's always one that is a topic that people are really, it's difficult because sometimes your parents have an idea of what they want you to do, but yet you have an idea and you're convicted, and be convicted on what you want to do and tell them why. Be willing to say this is why, because if you can't define it, you can't defend it. And when you're choosing a school that's your path of where you're going, or you're choosing not to go to school, or maybe you're choosing to go to a vocational school, or maybe you're choosing to go into the workplace right away, whatever it is, you're choosing to travel, whatever it is, you have to have a why, because the strength of your why will determine the level of your commitment. And that's where you need to communicate from. And it talks about, being bold, but being respectful, always. And then you must step into every conversation without hesitation, especially during a transition in life. And like I said, transitions happen. Families go through divorces, families go through marriages, families are blended, families go through financial issues, family go through death. We have all these things, and you are seeing it from your perspective. So when you have this young life that you guys have been gifted with, and it truly every day is a gift. And if you can look at it from that and realize that what you're going through, you're growing through. And that word transition is so important, because all it is identifying a specific phase in life that you're going through. So, and like I said, the playbook being titled Young Life in Transition means that your conversation skills and your experience might be different than your family or than your extended family. So you want to make sure that you can actually get a hold of that. So be bold, but be respectful, 100% be respectful. And that is something I think that's difficult sometimes when we're emotional, and so definitely be more of a mindful responder. Don't emotionally respond, emotionally react, have it more mindfully responding. So live and let go. It goes back to so many things that we carry with us in our life, and as we go through transitions, that we can't necessarily realize that everything is meant to grow you. And I really want to drive that point home while I have you guys here, to make sure that you grasp that, that you're going through something, but you're growing through it, and that's the important thing. So you can sit with page 19 and same thing, just kind of read through that, identify what you might be dealing with, and identify what might be part of your life that you really want to figure out, and then jot it down, and then go back and revisit it, and revisit it with fresh eyes, which is something that's really, really important. And on page 20, there's a little image here that I really want you to think about, that so oftentimes we don't necessarily put our hand out in communication with our family. We keep ourselves behind closed doors, we are behind a screen, we are with friends, or we're gone or whatever. And so when that is the case, sometimes family has a disconnect, and sometimes we have a disconnect in our communication. And we have to really understand that we have to be the ones to bridge that gap, so that olive branch, or that hand coming out to realizing that mom, dad, or whoever it is, that you're living with, grandparents, aunts, uncles, extended families, mentors, coaches, you have to bring them into that conversation, and it has to be an invitation in, because so oftentimes when it becomes intrusive, that's when we become defensive. So I want you to think about, all these things that we've talked about over the last, almost an hour now, all these things that we've talked about that are intentional words. Nothing was put in this playbook by accident. Nothing that I speak is by accident. It truly is meant to impact you, so that whenever you leave our time together, you take it with you. And then you can recall that, or maybe share it with someone else. So the being able to achieve that balance and that communication with your family is so important, so important. And then, focusing on your education in the future, not your social life all the time, although it might be important. You don't want to focus on that. You want to make sure that you're actually doing more than that. Social life is important, but yet we want to make sure that we're also creating a well-being, a sense of well-being for ourselves. Being able to put healthy boundaries in place, saying no to this from a place of abundance, not a place of lack. And that's a mindset, again, that goes back to personal mastery, to where we know ourselves beyond a shadow of a doubt we're going to make the right choice and the right decision when we're in a difficult situation. So when you realize that everything is meant to create an abundance in your life, you don't get that scarcity mindset. And you want to make sure that when you're entering into these different phases and transitions, that you bring that with you, that you bring that abundant mindset with you. And then finally, as we go through this, it talks about putting together a game plan. What is your game plan? Whenever you are building a house, like I said, we're going to put a blueprint together. Might change it along the way, but we have to put a blueprint together. So what is your game plan? If you're going from high school to college, what is your game plan? Have you decided that you're going to live on campus or off campus? Have you had a conversation with your family? Have you decided to have the difficult ones of financial conversation with your family? And be willing and open to hear them. And be willing to open to say that you actually want to know. Because you don't want to stick your head in the sand about life. You want to make sure that you're equipped 100%. So think about those intentional conversations. If you're changing schools, if you're going from a middle school to a high school, be intentional about that. Or maybe you're moving and you have to go to a whole new school, and that's a shock to your system. But what if it's actually better for you? What if that art of reframing comes back in and you can go, it's a new thing. I'm a new kid in school. I can meet new people. I can be a different version of myself. And sometimes that's needed. Sometimes we have to figure that out. So think about that. Think about that blueprint of life. Like I said, that book of life that you're actually writing right now currently. And one of the biggest ones, as you go through page 23, it talks more about step-by-step game plan for moving out. Whether you're going to go to college or go into the workforce, whatever it is, making sure, number one, that where and how you're making your money. Financial conversations sometimes can be very difficult, but I can tell you right now, I work with a lot of young adults on finances, on understanding how to do a checkbook. What does it mean to have a credit card? What is my FICO score? Because you're transitioning from your parents' home and all that information is taken care of to your own. And we want to empower you in that particular place. Have those conversations about that. What is a credit card? What is APR financing? What are all these things? Because when you learn those, and we teach this in our school of life, we teach these things because you're going to have to figure that out. And if your mom and dad and your family are resistant a little bit, just go back to the peacemaker. You know what? I want to learn these things because I want to be successful. I don't want to be blindsided with how do I pay rent? How do I negotiate a car deal? How do I even know what insurance is? So be willing to have that financial conversation when you're going to move out. Number two, do you have everything that you need stability-wise to make that jump? Number three, write down a list of essential things that you know that you're going to have to take on. Your phone bill, maybe it's your car, maybe it's your gas, your insurance, maybe it's rent, maybe you're sharing an apartment with somebody. And which brings me to number four, is if you're ready to move out because you want that independence, make sure that you do it from a good space. So if you're going from high school to college and you want to stay on campus, make sure the conversation is one of empowerment. I'm not leaving my home. I'm actually growing into a new space. My circle is getting bigger. Because a lot of times families think that, I'm losing my child. No. They have provided a really safe place for you to launch from. Think about that. You're launching into your life. Number five, are you comfortable and do you feel ready for your next chapter? That's a really loaded question, because are we ever comfortable with growth? Not very often times. But we need to get comfortable with the thought of growth. Then we can transition through anything. So go through this again, this page, step by step on yourself, or by yourself, and make sure that you're sitting with each one so that you can actually get to a place of understanding that all these steps are meant to create a successful life. Financial, well-being, communication, blueprint your life out, have a plan, and be willing to have those difficult conversations. And sometimes you have to bring people into your world that maybe you're not sure of. So the last thing I want to do is talk about, really leaving an imprint in your world. If you go to page 24, the personal mastery is really priceless, because every opportunity that you're going through right now, every stage that you're growing through right now, you won't ever be able to go back and revisit this. Once it's done, it's done. It looks different the next time. So think about that. So oftentimes we celebrate the first birthdays, your first kiss, the first time you drive. We just never know when it's gonna be the last one, that it's gonna look differently the next time. So think about that thought. Number one, be in the moment and embrace the process. This statement should come to mind every time you question your next steps in life. Read that again. Be in the moment and embrace the process. Number two, be selective of who you allow in your inner circle, which it can be those life navigator friends, or it can be your board of directors, your board of life directors. Audit that, and audit that often. Number three, be aware of real opportunities, because if they're meant for you, you have a split second to decide if you're going to take them or not. And that needs to be something that's on your mind all the time, because opportunities are always in front of you. Number four, Be open and willing to embrace new experiences. I cannot emphasize this one enough because we just don't understand new experiences can be scary, but they're not scary. They're just the unknown. So if the unknown, that means we're seeking, that means we're actively pursuing something in our life. That's exciting. Number 5, always and forever be a student of life. Always and forever be that student, because you never know who you're gonna meet, where you're gonna go, or what you're gonna hear that will actually make an impact in your life. And that's pretty exciting to me. I think it is. And the last part of the book, it talks about, staying in the game. How many times have you heard, life is a game, play it well, or it'll play you. Staying in the game. There is some bullet points here that I want you guys to think about. Number 1, you are a product of your choices that you make. That goes back to that radical accountability, right? We are a product of our choices, not our circumstances. Rise above those and set that bar really high so that you either have to meet it or exceed it, and so does everyone else around you. Number 2, surround yourself with the right people. This one is something that maybe you can't necessarily determine or predict. In the moment it feels right. You need to go with that instinct. Always see obstacles as growth opportunities. That goes back to that reframing that we talked about earlier, where you reframe that situation. What you perceive as an obstacle actually is an opportunity. Shift your energy towards the goal that you want. So make sure that your energy and your focus are going where you want, not where you don't want. Make sure it's all focused in that right place. Create a positive mindset every day. I can't tell you how important it is. This mind right here that you have been blessed with will create a successful life if it's set right. Mindset is everything. And learning how to actually grow your brain. There's topics on epigenetics and neuroplasticity, which I'm not going to get into that, but you can research those yourself and realize that we can grow our brain. We absolutely can grow that mindset, and it creates a much more powerful conversation inside our head, the internal dialogue. The last one, when you give up, someone else is ready to take your place. Don't miss an opportunity that was meant for you, and stay in the game, stay in the game. And lastly, I want to leave you with this little writing. It says, fall in love madly and deeply with your life. Transitions are inevitable, and you can either embrace them or go kicking and screaming through them. They're going to happen anyway. The choice is yours. Either decisions will grow you, decide which you choose to endure and how you endure them. Life is so precious. No one said it would be easy, right? But I can tell you that it's definitely worth it. And I know everyone around you can tell you the same exact thing. Give yourself a high five and go through your life on the other side of your transition. And I have to say, I am so excited that I was able to spend some time with you guys, even though it is on a screen. I welcome the opportunity so much. Leap 2020, thank you so much, Leap Foundation. And if you guys want to get a hold of me, you can find me on Instagram at officially Tracy Martin, and that's TRACEY Martin. And also we have a platform for teens called OTM Teens, and that's at OTM Teens on Instagram as well. We do events, we have playbooks, we have all kinds of information meant to be in service to your generation so that we can help grow you and guide you through our life experience, and also through connecting so many other people that are meant to actually be an impact in your world. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that you've gotten some sort of information from this. If you'd like to follow up and you need anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we really do want to let you know that we're here to be in service to your generation for growth. You guys are in this place and time in this world not by accident. This is by design. So think about that. I hope you enjoy the rest of Leap Week, and maybe next year I can be there in person with you guys and actually meet some of you and actually have an impact that way. So until then, enjoy the rest of the week. Please be safe, please be kind to each other, and go out in the world and make an impact. Take care.